just got done doing my workout for the day. So
Yeah.
I'm not in rock star mode. I'm in
Is
sweaty
that
guy mode.
is that a thing? Like, I mean, because I feel like that's something that's kind of a lost art of live performances and stuff is musicians getting, dressed up. I mean, obviously not as much as like Kiss, but even just putting on something that looks like they didn't just come from the gym or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I've kind of, I grew up watching guys that created personas, and like James Brown is a perfect example. But his thing is like he never really detached from that. Like he was always James Brown, and the guy you saw on stage, and he wouldn't let anybody see him otherwise. And so I kind of I put on the outfit to get on stage. I put on the hat sometimes. I put on the nicer clothes. Like when I was younger, sometimes you'd see me on stage, like in jeans and a t-shirt, because I was a kid, and that's kind of like was what people my age were wearing. But as I've gotten older, I've realized it's like we're there to entertain the people, and I think that people want to see somebody up there that doesn't look like or isn't necessarily dressed like any other average guy walking down the street. You got to set yourself apart a little bit. I mean, it's show business after all, for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. Because I mean, you started in the '90s, and that was when that was so not cool to you had like the grunge and stuff. Like I'm from Seattle, and I grew up in the '90s, and so I remember like that was what people wore, just flannels and t-shirts, and it was not cool to coming from the glam era. It was like the 180 of that. But now I feel like it's more. You can, yeah, especially with this kind of with blues and stuff. You got to have the hat, the fedora, and so you got to do that a little of that stuff.
You kind of owe it to the people. It's like these people are spending their hard-earned money to come out and be entertained, and I think you kind of owe it to them to suit up and show up, And I'm not wearing like tuxedos. Like BB King, his band famously wore tuxedos at every show, and we don't take it to that level, but like I do have I have a pretty firm request of my band members that, we're not wearing the same clothes on stage that we wore, throughout the middle of the day. We're not wearing the clothes that we walk to Target or, Costco or the shopping mall in. Like we have, there's a difference between our stage wear and our leisure wear.
Right. Well, you mentioned James Brown. Did you ever meet him?
Oh yeah, dude. He was Uncle James to me. So like him
Wow.
and my dad were friends before I was born. And if you go back and look at my first album, Ledbetter Heights, James Brown wrote the liner notes inside the booklet for the CD. So yeah, I mean I played with him. I saw him play throughout my entire childhood, many, many different times, spent, a lot of occasions with him and hanging out with him. We played a show in Augusta, Georgia back in, I don't know, maybe the year 2000 or something like that. And we played a theater, and he came out and sat out in the theater and watched our entire sound check, and then took me and the band out to lunch and took us over to his radio station and did an on-air interview with me and the band and everything. I mean, he was very much a part of my extended family, if you will.
Wow. And then I thought I saw something that I've never heard this story, but I think you posted it when Prince passed that you were lucky enough to meet him. Do you have a memory of that? Was that just like a one-time thing, or was it more of a?
Yeah, that was a one-time deal. I mean, that was back in my younger, kind of wilder days, and he was throwing a big party out at Paisley Park in Minneapolis, and I was in town for some reason or another, and wound up invited to come out. And mainly it's like I just really kind of caught it. We just kind of, briefly met one another. He always had this. I mean, you hear all these stories, and they're
Yeah.
true. I mean, he had this whole mystique. He had like people surrounding him all the time. So, if you walked through the room and you were there, it's like you could come into proximity, of him, but not necessarily like, be directly next to him kind of thing. And, it was like, that we were introduced, and then he kind of like, just kind of floated away. And then his guitar tech let me check out his main 50 it's 50 something, maybe 57 Telecaster that was like his number one guitar. So I got to check that guitar out, which is pretty cool. But I didn't stay very long. I was only there for maybe about an hour, hour and a half total. But yeah, that was my one encounter. And he kind of floated in and floated out, like he does or like he did.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. So many legends that you've collaborated with, worked with, toured with. Is there anyone that you haven't met that's on your bucket list?
No, but it's like I get that question every so often, and it's always kind of interesting to me because it's like if I had a running list of people that I wanted to check off that I wanted to meet, that would kind of make me feel like a stalker. It's like, I got that guy. No,
Well,
I'm
not
going
like a
after this
list,
guy.
like an
You know?
actual list, but there's somebody that
Yeah, no,
that you looked up to, that you've always been a fan of, that you've always dreamed of working with or collaborating or touring with, that you just never got to.
well, I don't really like, so I've got to do a lot of amazing things, and I've basically met everybody that I could ever hope to meet.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there's more people in my future. But I just kind of take it one day at a time and see what's in store. It's like I don't try and make things happen. I just kind of wait to see what's going to happen. And usually I end up crossing paths with some really interesting people. Like, for example, I never thought in my wildest dreams that I would have a band and make two records with Steven Stills from Crosby, Stills and Nash. It's like, but we did that, and it was a lot of fun, and we made two really cool records and did three tours together as a band called The Rides, and I never set out to make that happen. I never sat around and wondered if I could somehow make music with Steven Stills, but that ended up happening. And then it's even more exciting actually when you just kind of allow things to happen organically like that, because then it can actually be a surprise.
Interesting. Yeah. So you're not like one of those people that has like a vision board that's like, all right, I'm going to do this. I'm going to tour this place. I'm going to play this venue. You just let it happen. And then all these
Well,
amazing things happen.
Well, generally, yes and no. I mean, as I've gotten older, yes, I have a strategy. Like, I mean, you have to have a strategy. You have to have goals. You have to have, like, as far as a career goes, because you have to manage, like, a career has to be managed. And to manage a career, you got to set goals and then set out to accomplish them. So, yeah, when it comes to making a tour happen and the routing of a tour and the venues you play or the venues you want to play and things like that, I mean, yes, I'm very much involved strategically, and we have lots of meetings about that kind of stuff. But as far as the creative realm goes, and collaborations and jamming with, or having somebody come and write a song with me, or playing on their record or them playing on my record, I just kind of take that stuff as it comes, because I find it to be more interesting than trying to force something or make something happen like that.
Right. Well, I mean, if you're putting yourself in the right places and in the right field to do all those things, that, yeah, of course that's going to happen. But yeah, if you try to force it, I see what you're saying there. Sometimes it can be kind of fake
A
and
little contrived. Yeah.
contrived. Yeah,
You
that's a
know?
good word for it. Yeah. Well, this new record is so cool. I mean, it's just like, I don't know, you consider it kind of like a throwback. Like, it's just so great. It's just the blues. It's rocking. You got the horns on it. And, I mean, you recorded it in, Muscle Shoals, right?
Well, we wrote,
Wrote it.
but so we did two. Yeah, we did two records. It's like there's two. It's a double kind of companion albums, a volume one, volume two. So volume one came out in November, Dirt on My Diamonds, volume one, and then now we're getting ready to release volume two in September. And yeah, we wrote basically. I mean, when I do records, I write a lot of songs, and it doesn't ever mean that all those songs make it on any record. And sometimes some of them will make it on this record, and some of them might make it on a record a few years from now. I mean, who knows? But most of these songs were written down in Muscle Shoals at Fame Recording Studios. We were in that studio for about a week, me and a bunch of guys that I write songs with, and we were just having a big powwow, and we just started hammering out songs. Generally, I mean, we'll either when I'm writing songs, most of the time it's like we're either in Louisiana or we're in the Nashville area. So we want to do something different. So we're like, hey, let's go down to Muscle Shoals, and that studio in particular is like, it's like a time warp. I mean, the thing is like, it's exactly the way that it was back when all those legendary records were recorded there, back in the day. And so you walk in and you just feel this vibe. I mean, it's like it's permeated, the walls and the carpet and everything. I mean, it's just there. It's oozing out of the building. So we felt that, getting out of the normalcy of writing songs in Nashville and going down there, and then the vibe that's in that studio, that maybe something interesting might come from it. And what ended up coming from it was basically a double album, or a volume 1 volume 2 situation, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah. So how do you write those parts with the horns? Was that written there, or is that something that you guys added later when you recorded it?
Yeah, that's a overdub type situation. I mean, I like to do when we record records, I like to have the whole band playing, together in the studio at the same time. I'm not one of those guys that like emails songs to people, on the other side of the planet, has them just put their part on it. But generally, playing with horns, it's something you do. That's like one of the last parts of the process, is you put the horns on after the fact. It's kind of hard to try and track a band with a horn section in the room too. It's like bleed over and stuff like that. But yeah, those guys, generally, we'll have the horn section come up with parts, and then they'll come in and they'll play the parts they came up with. And then we either approve that, or we start kind of fine tuning it or making changes where necessary.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. I love all these songs are so catchy. They're fun. I think my favorite might be "Never Made It to Memphis." That's like is that one you're going to play live? Because I could see, and it's not only a sing along chorus. I feel like you want to sing along to the verses too.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I grew up in a radio household. My dad was a disc jockey and program director and general manager of multiple radio stations in my hometown. And so I grew up literally around the radio station and going to, every concert that came through town. But like, I was absorbing music 24/7, and the idea of writing songs that people that, stick in people's head, that have catchy melodies, that have choruses that make you want to sing along with them. That's part of my DNA. That's like part of who I am, and who I grew up as in Louisiana, and so that's what I've always wanted to do. And when I sat down to write music, that's always been my approach. It's like, I love blues, and blues is like the foundation of everything that we do, but I inevitably take it into different directions. But one of the things I always focused on was writing strong choruses that hopefully catch and, stick in people's heads and make them want to sing along.
Yeah, and then do you typically write the co-write the lyrics, or does Noah do all the lyric writing, or how does that work?
No, no, no. So Noah and I've written a couple songs together over the years, but generally I have people that I write with outside the band. And
Right.
I would say probably 98% of all the songs that we write start with musical ideas that I've come up with, and I'll walk in the room and I'll throw out a riff, or chord structure that I came up with, or a groove, and then we start building off of that. But yes, I participate in the writing of the lyrics and stuff. One of the reasons why I started co-writing with other people when I in the early days of my career was because I wasn't a singer at that point. So I didn't really know how to write vocal melodies. It's like that wasn't something that came naturally to me, because I wasn't really a singer. I'm still considering myself to be a guitar player that sings, but I sing way more lead vocals now in my music than I ever have before, right? And so, but back then I needed somebody to really help me, especially when it came to, the vocal melodies themselves. And so, I aligned myself with people that I felt like I had good chemistry with, and that brought, a lot to the table, especially in regards to lyrics and vocal melodies and stuff, and phrasing. So, and then, the more you do that, the better you become at it as well. And so that's something that I've kind of developed and really honed in on over the years by working with some incredible writers.
Yeah, well, I love, and I don't think it gets talked about very much, but I actually really like. I liked all your albums when a kid. When I was a kid, I had the CDs, and I remember like The Place You're In, and that was one that was so different. It was like 60% of the album was recorded with a Gibson Les Paul, which was unusual for you. It's
Yeah.
the first one with you singing, and it's kind of a less of a blues. It's a little bit more of alternative rock. You co-wrote the songs with Marty Fredrickson, who I love. And I mean, some of those songs are so good, like Alive, and but you never played that stuff live.
Well, we did on that tour, but we haven't played some of it in a long time. Like a lot that actual that song Alive, I really like that
Me
song. It's a
too.
little high. It's a little high for me now. So if I do add it back into the show, I'm gonna have to drop the key, because believe it or
Oh,
not, it's just slightly a bit too high at this point. But that doesn't mean that we won't play them in the future or that we don't ever play them. As a matter of fact, that song "Let Go," which is kind of a mid-tempo, almost a ballad type thing,
Yeah.
we played that for many, many years, even after the Place You're In tour, because that was one of the songs that kept me singing, in the show, and also working on harmonies because that song has so many different harmonies and stuff. So we played that for several years in the set, even after that tour for that record. But I almost threw some of these songs from the Place You're In into this set for this tour for this year. But once I started building the set list, so many of the new songs were feeling really good in the set that then it becomes a situation where, the set that we play now is right around 2 hours if there's not an opening act. And like, you start going too far over that, you start wearing people out. You know what I mean? But yeah, the Place You're In will probably make its way back into the live concert at some point in the near future. Some songs from that record, because I agree, it's a great record. It's basically a straight ahead rock album. There's not really a whole lot of blues other than in my guitar soloing and stuff. But it's one of the records that I'm really proud of because it did turn a lot of younger people onto my music at the time, and it's was my step out record for my singing in the band as well.
Yeah, and didn't you say that it was? And this is what made me realize that maybe that's why I like it too, is because that was more, you were dealing with some personal stuff, and you kind of put that into the record, so it's a very more emotional record for you.
Oh yeah, well, it was definitely a transition point for me in my life. There was a lot of changes happening. I was kind of like taking the opportunity to, you know, I don't know, just clean up my life. Things were like, it was all like a big party. And then I was like, I just can't keep doing all of that stuff. And so I was at a kind of a crossroads in a lot of different ways. And so there was a lot of changes happening, and for the better, without a doubt. But like, even just stepping up to the microphone and singing like the majority of the lead vocals on that record was a scary thing for me at the time. But I pushed myself to do it because I knew it was something that had to be done. And especially because of the nature of the songs and what was written in those songs, and that they were really my experiences, that it was only appropriate that I be the one to sing them.
Right. That makes sense. So that, it seems like that is I interview a lot of musicians, and it seems like that is a path that it's like you start out in the music business, and then it's so fun and it's like a party. And then you realize like, oh, I can't keep partying. Like you hit a wall, and then you're like, all right, I either got to tone it down and bring it in, or just people just go completely 100% sober.
Yeah, well, that's me. I mean, I haven't had a drop of alcohol or any kind of drug. I mean, the hardest thing that I've put in my body is Advil, in over 21 years, right? And that's fine. It's like, to me, I feel like my life has been so much better. I mean, when you're a kid and you sign a record deal and you become successful, it's like you think that a lot of times you think naively that, in order to be a legitimate musician and rock star and all of those things, that you have to live that kind of lifestyle. But you don't. And actually, I found that I've been more productive, and the quality of my music. Now, we had some incredible success and some really great records that I'm still very, very proud of, before I stopped drinking and all of that. But I do think that, the depth and the areas that I have been able to explore in my music and my playing and all of those things have gotten exponentially better as a result of me being more focused and being able to be more focused and present in my professional life and personal life. So I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything. But there's plenty of people that can live that lifestyle. I mean, look at, Keith Richards and guys that are legendary for that stuff. And I mean, it's not that everybody has to stop, but you just have to do what's best for you. And for me, that's what was best.
Yeah, you might, and you saw a lot of that young when you toured with these big acts like Aerosmith. I mean, they're notoriously sober. Didn't you toured with them like early on in the 90s, right?
Yeah, I toured with the Eagles, and that was a sober tour. And I did the Aerosmith Nine Lives tour. But then I opened up for the Stones, and I opened up for a lot of crazy bands too, that were getting down. And yeah, I kind of saw both ends of the spectrum. But at the end of the day, I just kind of like had a moment where I had to assess, like, who do I want to be? What do I want my life to be like? And what do I need to do, to get there? And this was the solution for me.
Yeah. So like, cause I know some people say like, oh, Aerosmith, they were so much better when they were doing drugs. And I mean, I feel like they're better now, But like in terms of inspiration, do you feel like back before, did drugs or alcohol, did that help inspire songs at all? And if, what do you use now to inspire you to write?
Well, I don't feel like my music was never like, I don't know, man. It never revolved around the drugs and the alcohol and things like that. Like my songs were never about that. My songs have always been about, for the most part, relationships and just observing life in general. Because I feel like that's something we can all relate to, is just living life and the world around us. And so that's kind of what it's always been about, and that's kind of what it has continued to be about. So. Um, I just think that a lot of musicians struggle with, when they drink and they do drugs and things like that, to do music, is that then they struggle if they're trying to stop it. What it does is it masks fear. Like that becomes a solution when people are scared, and maybe they don't even identify it as fear, but that's really kind of at the root of it, right? And
Hmm.
so, they use that as a coping mechanism in their lives to cover pain, to cover suffering, to cover fear, and all of those things that kind of drive them to continue using that as a solution, right? And so what happens is then when you take that away, even though the solution ends up becoming the problem, right? It works for a little while, but then eventually it stops working. It actually wreaks havoc in their lives. So then they're faced with a situation where they have to consider letting that go. But they still see it as a solution, right? So then they go, well, what's my solution now? Now I'm faced with all of these feelings. Now I'm faced with this anxiety. Now I'm faced with this fear. How am I going to go out there and entertain these people, without my medicine, basically, without the thing to like cover all of this anxiety and this fear up so that I can actually walk out there and do my thing. So they have to find a way to break through that. But for me, it was like, I always knew that I just leaned into the idea that I was playing on stage when I was 13 years old, and I wasn't drinking alcohol. I wasn't doing drugs when I was 13 years old. So I knew that I had done it before, and I knew that I could do it again.
Yeah. I mean, that reminds me, like, cause you're late. One of the songs on this new record, My Guitar is Crying. It's like this soulful, beautiful, slowed down kind of song. And there's some line about like, I'd have a drink if I thought it would help. So like, it's like that usually that doesn't solve the problem is kind of what I took that to mean.
Yeah, yeah. It says I'd have a drink if I thought it would help, but I just wind up feeling sorry for myself, because that's what you do. Is eventually it's like it's not a solution. It actually just pours gasoline on the fire. It just makes you feel worse, and just makes the problems worse. It's not ever a solution. There's no solution. I don't care if you're an alcoholic, if you're not an alcoholic, but like there's never a situation where pouring alcohol on a problem makes it better.
Right. It might temporarily freeze it, or at least for you to think about it, but then you wake up from after you're sober up and you're like, oh shit, things are either worse or the same.
That's Well, it's still there.
Yeah.
Like that is not. It's not a solution. There's no resolution in that, right? So inevitably, sooner or later, it's like you're just putting off the inevitable, and the inevitable is that you're going to have to come to terms with it or face whatever it is. So that's just not a solution. Although it might seem like one in the moment, right? And that's the cunning illusion of it all, is that this seems like it's a solution. And it's really not.
Right. You playing your guitar and writing songs? Is that a solution for you when you're dealing with tough emotions? Like, I'm assuming it's really cathartic to play the guitar and to write songs through it.
Oh, it's absolutely an outlet for me. It's absolutely therapeutic, without a doubt. I think listening to music for people who don't play it is also therapeutic. So if you feel, I mean, I remember being a kid, like you'd hear a song and all of a sudden it spoke to you and you feel like somebody else understands the way you feel, especially like as a kid trying to like navigate emotions for the first time. And you hear these songs and you just put it on repeat because you feel like it's speaking to your situation. And so just imagine if you're able to feel that from hearing a song that someone else did, just imagine the ability to actually make that music and play it for those people. Like, yes, it's very much a therapeutic thing. And, the whole COVID situation where, for 2 years, it's like you couldn't really play music and do your craft. I think a lot of musicians probably really struggled during that time because they didn't have their form of therapy available to them. So but it
Right.
absolutely helps in a number of different ways.
Yeah. And I feel like the country was already divided. Then it felt like it was more divided during that time. And because I think music, it's really weird to say, but I think music really does bring us all together, because if you go to a Kenny Wayne Shepherd show, I mean, it's going to be people from all different backgrounds, and they all have one thing in common. They love the music, and they're all rocking out to the same songs.
Yeah. Well, I've never really, I've always tried to use my platform to bring people together. I mean, that's the thing, is music generally is there to bring us all together, and, kind of leave all that stuff at the door. And that's always been my approach to music. I want to bring people together. Don't want to divide them. Definitely have no aspirations of becoming a politician or anything like that, or infusing politics into my music. It's like, just come one, come all, and let's have a great time.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, this is exciting because you got you have some solo shows, but then you're going back on the Experience Hendrix tour with Eric Johnson and Zach Wilde, right?
Yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun. That's always a great tour, and obviously due to COVID and other things, it's been kind of on hiatus. So it's going to be a lot of fun getting that whole gang back together and doing that tour. I mean, if you're a guitar player, there's not many there's not many tours that offer that kind of guitar playing, that level of guitar playing in one package, and then some of the greatest songs written by the greatest guitar player of all time. So it's always a home run on that tour.
Yeah, I've only seen you live once. It was amazing. And then I think one of my favorite parts was I'm pretty sure you did Little Wing. I mean, which is Stevie Ray Vaughan has done it, but also it's originally Jimi Hendrix, and like you just killed that from what I remember.
Well, we generally every show that I've ever done, with only a few exceptions, since I put my band together at age 15, the last song of the show is always "Voodoo Child" by Jimi Hendrix. So, that's one of the songs that I've kind of made. It's a staple in my show, and it's definitely a crowd pleaser. And we'll be doing it on the Experience Hendrix tour as well.
Awesome! Well, I can't wait. Yeah, you're coming to Arizona, so I'll definitely check out either the one in Tucson or Mesa, and yeah, people can. I'll put the link in the show notes about the tour dates and the album. The volume 1, Dirt on My Diamonds, is out now. There's one song of volume 2 is out now, and then the full album comes out. What do we have the date now? Do you remember what it is? I always forget. September 20th?
I think September. Yeah, I think that's about right.
Okay, perfect. Anything else you'd like to promote here?
No, man, we got a lot of stuff coming in the pipeline. I mean, we encourage people to, just get connected with us through social media so that we can stay in touch, and just, keep checking to see if we're coming in your area, because, I mean, I've got several albums in the works, and that's going to keep us out on the road for the next several years for sure. So a lot of exciting things happening.
Yeah, I definitely encourage people to see you live. I mean, the recorded music is amazing, but seeing it live is like, it takes it to a different level, in my opinion. I love it.
I appreciate it, man.
All right. Well, thanks so much. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Have a good one.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.